Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. We've got a great show for you today. Really excited about it. The topic is, what is hell actually like according to the vision of four saints?
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about how Satan got his name, the 9 circles of hell according to Dante, and how hell that Jesus mentioned is a real place on earth that you could visit today.
And like Dante said, abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, man, let's get this episode started. I want to introduce Ryan Scheel here and Father Rich Pagano back as always.
What's happening?
It's kind of weird, you know, this is like our first podcast in the dark and it's about hell.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
That's kind
Turn
of
off the lights. I'm scared.
that's scary. Oh, you want the lights on when you're scared, man.
It's terrifying.
It
Yeah,
is.
thank goodness we have these spots on us right now.
Yeah, that
Who
helps
knows
out
what
a lot.
happens in the dark otherwise?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get this jammer going.
So today we're going to talk about what we actually know about hell from 4 saints who had visions of hell. There's going to be Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John Bosco, Saint Faustina, and Saints Jacinto and Francisco Marto from Fatima.
Yeah.
We're also going to talk about Gehenna and that it's a real place, how
In Jerusalem.
where the word hell comes from, how Satan got his name, and the 9 circles of hell according to Dante.
I like it.
It's a lot of content. Let's jump in.
All right. Now, jump into
Jump
hell.
into hell. Yeah.
Let's jump into hell.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
That's good.
Hard pass.
Well, technically it would be fall, right?
Yes. That's right.
So
Wasn't there like a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
this is
Like
this
the
is
second
Ryan and Father Rich's bogus journey.
bogus journey into hell.
I think there's a common thread today in the world to say hell is a myth. Hell is not real. Hell is something invented to scare people into maintaining a religious life. You'll even find that within the Catholic Church, some priests, some people say hell is not real. It's not a merciful God would not somebody send anyone to hell.
You know what I would say? Then why are all these Netflix shows about hell? What are they doing?
Dude.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
There's so many what a great argument.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
It's really impressive.
Thomas Aquinas is so proud of you.
Dude, I just
Question 1, is hell real? I object. What about all these Netflix shows? Goodness gracious.
oh my gosh.
and then the Lord said, great point.
Wow.
Whoa.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But that idea that hell is not real is so contrary to the teachings of Jesus. Jesus mentioned hell more than he mentioned heaven.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well then, there you have it.
Do we have anything else to share?
Other than the Netflix thing, I just,
I got nothing.
So
got nothing.
here's what the Catholic Church teaches. The teaching, this is Catechism 1035. The teaching of the Catholic Church affirms the existence of hell and its eternity. Immediately after the death, the souls of those who die in a state of mortal sin descend into hell, where they will suffer the punishments of hell, eternal fire. The chief punishment in hell is the eternal separation from God, in whom alone man can possess the life and happiness for which he was created and for which he longs.
I love Psalm 9:17, the verse that says, the wicked go down to the realm of the dead, all the nations that forget God. And in relationship to that, this relationship that we have with God that is so intimate based in our creation is so important to reflect on. And isn't it interesting that the liturgy itself is always do this in remembrance of me? And the anamnesis, this word that we're calling to memory this covenant, this contract that is rooted in our relationship with Christ, that gives us that beautiful process of constantly remembering God, not forgetting him, and not forgetting, most importantly, his commands.
Now, what most people think of as hell, and what a lot of, I think the common understanding or imagery of hell is based off of the work of Dante Alighieri. He was an Italian poet in the 1350s, and he wrote a book called Divine Comedy. Right. Now, haha. Well, it's not a comedy in that sense.
I know.
But in the Italian sense that it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
But it was broken into 3 parts: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. The idea of what we think of as hell, most of the common thoughts come from the Inferno. In the Inferno, Dante divides hell into 9 circles. And in each of these circles, people are tormented based on the sins that they committed in their life. So you have
Pretty introspective.
if you've never read it, it's really fascinating.
I saw the movie on Netflix.
No, it is fascinating. I had it on an audio CD back in the day that I would listen to when I was driving. And a lot of his illusions that he draws out poetically in these books were then painted on canvas, placed inside of churches, and I mean very, very provocative images and very appropriated punishments for the sins that were committed.
Right. So here, his 9 circles. The first and the highest circle is limbo. So that's for the unbaptized and virtuous pagans or paganos.
I guess limbo.
Yeah. So there's really no torment, but they're struck with grief from being separated from God now that they have faced, eternal realization of the reality of God. Now, the next circle is lust. And the people who are guilty of the sins of lust are bent up and blown around in the wind endlessly. And they strike against rocks continuously. The next circle is gluttony. And in that circle, they're bombarded constantly with rain and black snow and hail.
I don't know. I don't get that illusion.
The next circle is for the greedy. They are forced to push boulders, and they always are having to fight and just constantly wanting. The next circle is anger. The circle after that is heresy, then violence, then fraud, and then the very lowest circle of hell is treachery. And in the very lowest circle of hell, Satan himself is frozen into a lake. It's completely cold, and he chews on Judas in his mouth for all of eternity. Satan chews on Judas.
Well, that's interesting.
Sounds like some hard beef jerky right there. Gosh, that's horrible, dude.
Some hard beef jerky. Wow.
That would be like a good movie.
Oh, Lord.
Judas, hard beef jerky.
That's
Devil's mouth. Yeah.
So John Paul II.
It's getting late.
Oh, Lord, have mercy, man. That's a lot to swallow right there, Shield.
Yeah.
I don't know, pun intended.
Well, alrighty then.
So those are the nine circles.
Nine circles.
So that's where now this was a poem. It was allegorical. It was meant to tie sins to what he viewed as just punishments. Do you ever preach on hell?
I do preach some fire and brimstone every now and then. Yeah.
What kind of things you say?
The wages of sin is death. No, I probably would need to be in the moment of the act of preaching, but the gravity of sin and what that means in relationship to what hell is such an important delivery for people to realize that their actions that are oriented toward the self is oriented toward death and hell, and that complete absence of God, the complete absence of a place of belonging and isolation. And people respond because they get a taste of that in their own sinfulness.
Yeah, you mentioned in the intro that's like hell on earth, right? So I think preaching the gospel is preaching what we're all called to do, is live fulfilled lives, and in that fulfillment, finding meaning, and it's just kind of like it's either one way or the other. You can put in juxtaposition to somebody preaching, don't be attached to gluttony, right? For example, or, you can preach about that and the despair that you have with that, right? Without preaching like, hey, you're going to hell. You're saying, hey, look, this is the hell that you're in right now.
Yeah.
And the reason why you're in it is because it's not what you were called to, to live.
And I would never use fear tactics ever in a homily to proselytize someone, which has been done in the history of the church for sure. And it's possibly being done in different circles of Christianity and Catholicism even now. But I don't believe that should be the number one motivator of why you do what you ought to do. It should be drawn by the cords of the heart, as the Psalms say, because it is beauty that draws you. It is the place of the commitment and the responsibility of love that should absolutely animate your response. So it's an invitation. So I would rather spend more time developing, the scriptures in light that are appropriate for the day, that really speak of this greater call of Christ. But you have to stay rooted in what Jesus is saying. So if it's on hell, you preach on hell, and if it's about the kingdom, if it's about the Beatitudes, you preach about that.
Now, John Paul II, in a general audience, Wednesday, July 28th, 1999, he gave a little catechism on hell. And here's what he said, just briefly the first parts of it. He said, God is infinitely good and merciful Father. But man, called to respond to him freely, can unfortunately choose to reject his love and forgiveness once and for all, thus separating himself forever from joyful communion with him. He goes on to say, it is not a punishment imposed externally by God, but a development of premises already set by people in this life. The very dimension of unhappiness which this obscure condition brings can in a certain way be sensed in the light of some of the terrible experience we have suffered, which is commonly said as, this makes life like hell. In a theological sense, however, hell is something else. It is the ultimate consequence of sin itself, which turns against the person who committed it. It is the state of those who definitively reject the Father's mercy, even at the end of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've got to to reject God's mercy, you have to encounter it.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that the form of apostasy in a way?
Right.
Where it's a complete rejection of God's goodness and those who sin against the Holy Spirit. It's like this unforgivable place because the choice has been made. People and Saint Faustina, I know that we're going to get into Saint Faustina a little bit later, but she has that beautiful insight, that mystical insight of people before the infinite mercy of God choose hell. So it's not God condemning the soul to hell. It's more of the fact of this individual subjective person choosing hell because in light of the righteousness and perfection of God's mercy, they are unworthy in their own sight and they've already condemned themselves.
That's right. So, and it's not Satan punishing you. It's not God punishing you. It is a punishment you are choosing of your own free will, and you're setting yourself there, and the punishment is the separation from God. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about what actually happens there. Now, Saint Teresa of Avila, right? You know her.
Yeah.
No, that's Teresa of Lisieux.
Oh. No, she's around
We
here
don't have
somewhere.
a Teresa of Avila. Oh, man, Teresa of Avila.
Yeah. Doctor of the church, we need her.
Yeah, we do.
So here's what she said hell was like. She said, the entrance seemed to be a long, narrow pass, like a furnace. The ground was saturated with water and mud and foul. It smelled bad, and there was rats and vermin and bugs everywhere.
Bugs.
Now, this is where
I knew bugs are going to hell.
This is going to be gross, terrifying. At the end of this long path was a hollow place in the wall, like a closet, and I saw myself confined in it.
Oof.
I felt a fire in my soul. My body was suffering unendurably. Let's see, where's this? I did not see who tormented me, but I felt myself on fire and torn to pieces. As it seemed to me, and I repeat this, it was an inward fire and the greatest torment of despair. I could not sit down, lie down. There was no room to move. I was placed in a hole in the wall, and I could not breathe. There was no light but thick darkness.
Wow.
Sounds like a fun place.
Yeah, and some of those
For all-
themes and some of those emotive language, I hear people talk to me all the time about those places and people going through hell
Yeah.
on earth.
Yeah, I can relate. I go to confession like once a month, and usually when I go, I feel torn to pieces. You know, I'm like scatterbrained. You know, I just don't feel right. I mean, it's obviously not a great torture or anything, but you can kind of sense that. I can kind of sense that. Like, hey, I need to go to confession. Like, just round this up, take out the trash.
And how do you feel after you go to confession?
Like I'm just, you know, woven back together.
The greatest
The
medicine
clarity.
to a healthy soul, man. I mean,
awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because that sickness of unhappiness that John Paul II said so beautifully in that catechesis, you know, it infects us. You know, sin infects us so much, not only just with our disposition emotionally, but also the way that we look at ourselves. And it will tear us up because we start to be, we're conflicted, you know, in our own inner reality and identity, that, you know, we need assistance and we need help and we need a doctor to be able to fix us.
Yeah.
And that doctoral precision of God's mercy that comes to us in the sacrament of reconciliation is all the soul needs.
Yeah, and it's just a gift there, just waiting. Like I'm kind of over the fact that, you know, I don't deserve this or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I do.
I need it.
I need this, man.
Yeah, you know, like I definitely don't deserve it.
I don't deserve it, but I need it.
But the vision of what hell is actually like, a long, narrow, dirty,
God bless.
dark pathway. Bugs and
I hate
rats.
bugs,
It
man.
sounds like the train in New York City. Like the rats and the
But then there's just
dirty and
Mud.
smelly. Like, look at the A train.
but there's a little hole in the wall, and then locked in there for all eternity. You can never sit, move,
bless
turn,
America.
lay down.
It's discontent.
No relief for eternity.
Yeah, it's like
It never gets better. That's terrifying.
That is pretty terrifying.
Just darkness and heat and confinement.
And is that a result of like, so you have mercy that's constantly being extended by God to us, whether you're here on earth or in purgatory, right, or whatever. At some point, I would imagine purgatory would take away all of this distraction, where it could be kind of presented in a way where you're not distracted from the world around you and a lot of the things that concupiscence, if you will, right? Is that a thing? Like when you're in purgatory?
Well, purgatory is very different than hell.
Yeah, because you're not on the earth. You're not subjected to concupiscence anymore. You're in a place where God can present Himself to you in what I would consider maybe greater.
I think
greater clarity.
concupiscence is probably why you're in hell or in purgatory, because you still have that attachment to sin, and that's what the purgation. That is what the fire is burning out of you.
Yeah,
Purging.
It's getting rid of that concupiscence.
but in that fire, you see the mercy and the presence of God, right? So you can still
and there are saints' experiences of the Blessed Virgin Mary visiting souls in purgatory.
Yeah.
You know, different saints visiting souls in purgatory to offer a certain satiation and hope, and these realities that are even present in our world and our own experience on earth. So you think about a priest that hears your confession, Ryan, like that gives you hope. Or when you're in the confessional line, you know, it's like the light at the end of that narrow tunnel that was described by Teresa of Avila. You know, I feel like I'm in this narrow tunnel, that I'm breaking myself out into a new day. Purgatory has to be something similar to that,
Right.
where there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's a process of being purged from one's sin, because there's such an attachment and concupiscence on earth that this is the process of alleviating that. So I could imagine that through that process, it would be a greater sense of freedom that happens to the soul in the process of it being
and you
purged.
still have a will to say no. Like,
At that point, when you're in purgatory,
you still have a will. You can
it's
be like,
like
no, I
you
don't
made
want
it.
this.
You know, that at least that's the way that it's perceived. Is you make it into purgatory.
it may take a while.
Yeah. So and we can't think of it temporally. You know,
Oh,
we
you
can't think
made
of
it.
in
It's not
time.
Middle Earth or anything.
No, it's not Middle Earth.
Okay.
It's not like, okay, you're confined for, this
Yeah.
amount of time in purgatory. But the experiential realities of the soul goes through a sense
Gotcha.
of being purged of
Perfect.
the depths of sin.
I didn't make it that far in the seminary.
The fire of hell and the fire of purgatory are very different. One is destructive and one is tormenting. The other is like the heat of a fever that is your body fighting off. You have the heat of a fever fighting off an infection that is curing you. But the heat and the fever is uncomfortable, but it leads to a cure. That's like purgatory. Hell is torment.
It's like the fever for the flavor of a Pringle.
It's nothing like that. It's absolutely
If
nothing
you experience
like
gluttony, it might be.
that. Right. So another saint who saw
Or like
how,
I'm thinking purgatory in regards to the Thai food we just had.
Oh, that's so good.
It's like the
that's
spice
spicy.
that was initially hit your palate. It's like, oh my gosh, this is really spicy.
but then it became more delightful.
Oh yeah, this is
Yes.
delightful.
It's very sneaky.
It's also nothing like that. Where's our? Did we bring our
What was
heresy
the
button?
other? What was the other? Yeah.
All right, another saint that saw hell, Saint John Bosco. Now he had a long vision of hell. A lot of it was tied to the young boys that were in his charge, and he was terrified of seeing the oratory and the boys of the oratory going to hell because he felt as their pastor and one of their fathers, right? So he said, going to hell, at first, the path to hell was flowers, and it was not that bad. It was dark. But the closer you got, the flowers started dying, and it started looking terrifying. And then he got into a certain place where he crossed over a threshold, and then he felt indescribable terror, and he couldn't take another step. And he can see a huge cavern, and it gradually disappeared and recessed into a mountain, and there was flames, walls, thick walls, each wall 1,000 miles thick, and then each space in between 1,000, like 10 feet, and then 1,000-mile thick wall, just absolute heat and confinement. And he said there wasn't actually fire. Everything was so hot. It was glowing, burning, hot white, but still dark. Pretty terrifying.
Oh yeah.
How could it be burning hot, white, and dark?
I don't know.
It's interesting.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, you don't want to know. Don't
Shut up,
you do
Ryan.
not want to find out.
Why are you questioning the absence of light and light itself?
The absence of God, though. You know, there's so many things that come from God that we take for granted. You know, the breath that we draw, you know, the food that we eat, the friendships that we have, the things that sustain us in life. And, you know, think about that. Like none of that is there that you've taken for granted your whole life. You know, and the light that penetrates your eyes so you could see. You know, all of that is gone.
It's insatiable. Your life is insatiable. Nothing can satiate. Did I say that right? Satiate?
Satiate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job, Ryan. He got that off his little calendar.
No, it's
Satiate.
satiate.
The word of the day.
Satiate of November. Satiated of October or something. No, I think Augustine said our hearts are restless until they rest in you, God. In God. You, my Lord, I think he said. But he also said that sin is insatiable. And it's like drinking salt water. You're thirsty and you're drinking salt water and you just become more thirsty and more thirsty. And you don't get satiation.
This is I might be in hell. It's just continuously trying to record this episode and keeping you guys in line for all eternity.
When we think of the water that comes from springs, you know, could you imagine being confined to, you know, like a raft in the middle of the ocean where you went through all of your water and, you know, then you're just drinking this salt water and how dehydrated you'll become. And what your palate is thirsting for is that spring water, the waters of salvation that springs forth for us, you know, out of the heart of Christ and the baptismal waters. So you could imagine, you know, that deep thirst that's never going to be quenched. And in light of what we were sharing about purgatory and these different insights that saints and mystics had throughout the years, that there are moments of great consolation and that satiation that comes from the intercessory powers of the saints in that reality of what happens. Or I think of Mother Teresa, come be my light. and how she had a desire, even though she was thrown into that type of darkness on earth, the darkness of intellect, the darkness of her worth and God's love for her. She went for over 45 years without that reality in her prayer life. And how she in heaven wants to be that type of light for those who are most, that are most in darkness. Whenever I'm experiencing personal darkness, I turn to her and I ask her for her help and her assistance and her intercession and her example so that I can be steadfast and continue to make it. It's like Winston Churchill says, like, if you find yourself in hell,
keep going,
right?
Yeah.
We've got to keep going as members of Christ. We are members of the light, and we've got to keep on moving toward the light. And, to look at the realities of hell, we don't have to look too far because we can experience it in our own struggle and our own suffering of concupiscence itself.
So here we go. Now, I know you have a special devotion to St. Faustina.
I do.
Now, in her diary, in an entry from October 1936, she talks about having had a vision of hell. And this is what she wrote. I am writing this at the command of God so that no soul may find an excuse by saying there is no hell or that nobody has ever been there, and so no one can say what it is like. So here's what she saw. Now this is, again, St. Faustina from her journal. Today I was led by an angel to the chasms of hell. It is a place of great torture, how awesomely large and extensive. These are the kinds of tortures I saw. The first torture constitutes hell is the loss of God. The second is the perpetual remorse of conscience. The third is one's condition will never change. The fourth is that the fire will penetrate the soul without destroying it, that you never can get out of it. The fifth is that the torture is in continual darkness and terrible suffocating smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate.
And then I've stayed with you guys. It's a terrible suffocating smell at times.
There's just a smell.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's just a smell.
Italians have that.
Yeah. The fifth torture is continual darkness and a terrible suffocating smell. And despite the darkness, the devils and the souls of the damned see each other and all the evil, both of the others and their own. The sixth torture is the constant company of Satan.
Lord have mercy.
The seventh torture is horrible despair, hatred of God, vile words, curses, and blasphemies. Now, she said, these tortures were suffered by all damned people in hell, but each had one additional suffering that was particular to their sins. These special tortures designed for particular souls. They torment the senses. Each soul undergoes terrible and indescribable sufferings related to the manner in which they sinned.
Yep. It sounds a lot, structurally, it sounds a lot like Inferno. How your suffering is related to the sin.
I love in the same reference from the diary, which is around 741. So if those of you who want to look at St. Faustina's diary, if you don't have a diary of St. Faustina, this was a monumental find for me early on in my reversion. And she offered me so much insight into how I approach my ministry, how I preach on the mercy of God, and how I try to exercise compassion as best as I can, though I fall short all the time and every day in showing compassion to my neighbor. But that God willing, through God's omnipotence and his mercy, he will continue to guide me. But speaking of that omnipotence and God's mercy, listen to this. There are caverns and pits of torture where one form of agony differs from another, as Ryan Schill just mentioned before. I would have died at the very sight of these tortures. Just her seeing the tortures, not even going through the tortures associated with the senses. She says, I would die at the very sight of them if the omnipotence of God had not supported me. The advocacy that we have in the Spirit of God, in our faith, is just so powerful. We're talking about confession. What type of consolation could we compare the realities of confession to, and the omnipotence of God's loving mercy ever supporting us along the way? That, I don't know what I would do without it. I mean, it's just so necessary, as it was necessary to St. Faustina's work. And I thank God that we have this insight from her, because she gives us probably one of the most articulate explanations and insights, way better in my opinion than Dante's version.
Yeah, Dante's were allegorical and made up.
Yeah.
Fiction. These are actual visions by
yeah.
saints. Now, you don't have to take them as a deposit of faith, but these are saints. They're trustworthy. So the fourth one that we're going to talk about are the shepherds of Fatima.
Yeah.
Francisco Jacinto and Sister Lucy.
Yeah.
Right?
Didn't Sister Lucy pass away?
She did. Yeah, about 10 years ago.
10 years ago? Yeah.
Maybe 15 at this point. So at Fatima, Our Lady showed hell to these three shepherd children. And in her memoirs, Sister Lucia described the vision of hell that Mary showed to them. She said, this is uncomfortable. She opened her hands once more, and she had done as she had done the 2 previous months. The rays of light appeared to penetrate the earth, and we saw, as it were, a vast sea of fire. Plunged in this fire, we saw the demons and souls of the damned. The latter were like transparent burning embers, all blackened or burnished bronze, having human forms. They were floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames, which issued from within themselves. So it was like, have you ever seen like a fire and it's like kicking up leaves?
Yeah.
These people, these souls are on fire and they're being pushed up in the air by the fire, burning in themselves, just moving around.
Yowza.
No good. Now they fell back on every side like sparks in huge fires, without weight or equilibrium, amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fright. The demons were distinguished from the souls of the damned by their terrifying and repellent likeness to frightful and unknown animals, black and transparent like burning coals. The vision only lasted for a moment, thanks to our good Heavenly Mother, who at the first apparition had promised to take us to heaven. Without that, I think I would have died of terror and fear.
Wow. There were kids too, huh? How about that for nightmares?
And that same reality that Saint Faustina talked about, and the very sight of this, how it's so gripping and overwhelming that, next to the support that comes from divine consolation, from Our Lady and from Jesus's mercy, we can't withstand just the very thought of these realities. I mean, even as we're speaking about them, and you brought up Netflix before. I watched this Netflix show. It was an original movie.
Are we talking about Netflix and hell again?
Yeah, we're pulling a full circle.
Yeah.
Here.
Is this the worst catechism?
Hold Dark. Oh my gosh. I probably shouldn't even said the name of it, but it is just so gut-wrenching, and the realities of like sacrificing your child. But we had a previous episode on Our Lady of Guadalupe that we shot, and the fact that children were being sacrificed even in
Mayan temples
and stuff like that. And this has been a part of, that type of sacrifice has been a part of the history of the world for so long. And we could even look at abortion in the same manner today. But Our Lady, as a champion, Our Lady of Guadalupe, our champion who put an end to those sacrifices in Mexico City and Mexico, we need more of Our Lady. Yeah. And this revelation from Fatima is a definite confirmation of that.
And she's a player in the game.
She's a total player.
Yeah.
Like
she's opening it up. She's there.
It's like Acts 2:27, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead. You will not let your Holy One see decay.
Yeah.
Like God is for us. And if that's the case, who could be against us? There's no power that can come against us when we have that type of advocacy.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I think I heard it one time, I'm paraphrasing, but Sister Faustina, I think Jesus said, she said something like, well, what if somebody has this great sin, or whatever. And she heard Jesus say something like, whoever has sinned the greatest is the most entitled to my mercy. Right. So you think of, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. And,
and it's even in the scriptures where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more.
All the more. Yep. So it ain't like you get no opportunities.
and like these themes that we're hearing consistently throughout can be summarized in weeping, grinding of teeth, these
confinement,
darkness,
heat, separation, no escape, despair, regret, remorse.
Where
flying
is the
up into the
ministry?
air.
Where is the ministry of the church among people that are suffering those realities now?
They're everywhere.
And that's the thing, because the church is there to accompany people in that form of advocacy, to support them to move through these hellacious experiences in life.
To bring the gospel
To bring the gospel and to bring the light that comes from Christ, to bring that hope that is secure. Absolutely. And the promise of salvation. So, our work is needed. And you may be sitting out there listening to this podcast, and you may be really feeling down and sick in the heart with some of these realities in your own life. Know that there is consolation for you in the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Know that there's consolation for you in the confessional. Know that the scriptures are there to provide for you the strength that you can draw from the living word, so that you can endure these present day sufferings and remain faithful, because God's promise is true and God's promise is for you. And he is going to hold you in the palm of his hand and guide you through these difficult moments. Hold sure.
Yeah. In short, if God forgives me, he can forgive you. Because I was a dummy.
A big dummy.
Still is. Hey, so we're going to get into like Satan's name and stuff like that?
So, all right. First, in the Bible, what does Jesus usually call hell? Where does he
Gehenna.
say Gehenna?
That's where they
It was like
put
a
all the
trash
dirty
pit. It was
diapers.
like a dump.
Gehenna was a
Like my
real
house.
place.
Some days.
It was in that deep valley.
Yeah, the Valley of Ben Hinnom.
Yeah.
So outside of Jerusalem, there was a valley. Now, during the Kingdom of Judah, the Valley of Ben Hinnom, south of Jerusalem and south of Mount Zion, it was a place where the Canaanites worshipped Moloch. Now, Moloch was a Canaanite god that people sacrificed children to. And they would sacrifice those children to Moloch through immolation, or burning them alive.
Gross.
So
That's horrible.
that's
That actually went down in Jerusalem?
yes,
Wow.
And that's what I was saying. Like this
What
was
is it with babies? And just
bro,
like,
this
because it's
happened
innocence.
all over the
It's
world. It's the
innocence.
sacrifice of innocence to the gods,
yeah.
Yeah.
to appease the gods.
So the Canaanites would sacrifice children by burning them to Moloch, which is just, I can't even think of that. So that valley became a damned place, and no one would go there because, especially for Jews, that was incredibly unclean place.
Yeah.
So what they used that land for then was the dump. All the garbage was dumped in there because it was unusable for anything else because it was unclean. So since they already had a ritually unclean and terrible place, they threw all their garbage there. And back then, what you did with garbage is you would set it on fire, right? Still do. If you like burning a couch or something.
Well, I had a burn pit when I had a trailer on the Swanee.
Yeah, so this is like a giant burn pit for Jerusalem, and it never really
Are you
goes out.
serious?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It was back when I was before pre-conversion.
When you're living in
We
the
had a
trailer
big
down
rope
by the
swing.
river.
It was down by the Swanee River. Yeah.
So the fire never went out because people are always throwing more garbage in and just smolder and burn. And there's worms and maggots and fires and unquenchable fires. It never
Talk about
went out.
stench.
And it was filthy and diseased. And
Okay.
children had been sacrificed there.
Gross.
But everyone knew it. It's
Yeah.
right there.
So it's a dump.
Yeah.
And that's why Jesus always referred to that.
So where are we going with this?
So that's-
Gehenna was a bad place.
It's still there. That's what Jesus called hell.
Right.
Gehenna. And now it's there's some gardens and parks there. It's a real place. When you go to Jerusalem, if you go, it's on the Gay Ben Hinnom Street. There's like the Zurich Gardens. There's a hotel there. It's still there.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
where
I don't
Jesus
think I
called
want to
hell.
stay in that hotel.
No.
Yeah, I'll stick to Notre Dame up there with the
Yeah,
Legion.
we're not
That
gonna
is a
mention
nice
that hotel. Yeah. Terrible reviews on Yelp.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. So the word hell actually comes from a Proto-Indo-European language. The common
Proto-Indo-European language.
Right.
Rich, did you get that?
I did.
Do you know what it is?
Proto-Indo-European.
So that was the language that most European languages descended from, right? Greek, Latin,
Okay, Greek and Latin. Okay.
almost all the languages descended from that in one way, shape, or form. It was kind of a common language. Now, the word hell comes from an old word that basically meant to conceal or to cover.
Okay.
In the Old Testament, they called it Sheol,
Sheol. Yeah.
which again probably comes from the same root word.
Hell, Sheol.
Yep. And then last thing I wanted to talk about was how the devil actually got his name.
Well, you got devil, Satan, Lucifer.
Right.
Lucifer was Beelzebub.
Well, Beelzebub is a demon. Mm-hmm. Not the same.
Not the head one.
Yeah. Beelzebub is the Lord of the Flies.
Oh man, I just pulled that book out of my collection.
Your repertoire.
Yeah, my repertoire.
No, so Lucifer, what is
So Satan-
he's called Satan in the Bible, right?
Yeah. So actually, it comes from a Hebrew word, ha-shatan, which means the accuser.
Yep. Good name.
Right.
The accuser of our brothers is cast down.
Yep.
Now, the word the devil comes from a transliteration from that Hebrew word. So the Greek word for accuser was diabolos, which is where diabolical
Diablo.
and devil come from.
It's where Diablo sauce comes from too at some of the Mexican restaurants.
I'm sure.
That word, same word.
And then kind of that Greek word mutating into English became diophil, devil.
Gotcha.
That's where it comes from.
Interesting.
And Lucifer comes from Hallel, a Greek, another Hebrew word, meaning shining one or the light bearer.
Light bearer. Yeah, that's his. Yeah, because he's an angel of light. Yeah.
Yeah. But, thinking about the hot, dark, confined worms, torture, never getting out, never being able to move, standing forever, never the chance of repentance, that's terrifying.
Dirty.
Yeah.
Dirty place.
We need to ask Father Rich for confession.
Father Rich, what are you looking up over there?
I'm looking at Beelzebul.
Beelzebul?
Yeah, I'm looking up Beelzebul because it says that Beelzebul is the leader
It's a leader.
of all demons.
Well,
here.
no, I mean, like what, a third of the angels?
The ruler of demons. It is only by Beelzebul, the ruler of demons, that this fellow casts out the demons.
So is
in
Satan-
the context of the Pharisees accusing Jesus.
Is Satan considered
Casting
an
out.
archdemon or like an archangel? He's the equivalent of an archangel, and there are angels. So there's an order of intelligence.
Well, all the fallen angels, and there's another episode that we did about angels, where we'll talk really about the orders of angels.
orders of
and,
angels, okay.
How they fell.
I'll
But,
zip my lip.
yeah, you zip that up.
Zip, zipper.
But enemy, liar, father of lies, murderer, ruler of this world, God of this age, angel of light, Belial, ruler of the authority of
Did
the
you say
air.
Lyle?
Belial.
I'm like, I know a guy named Lyle.
But,
Are you
this-
reading Sepultura lyrics?
That was a crazy band, man.
Yeah, just these descriptive, dragon, old serpent,
Old Scratch.
deceiver of the old scratch. That's right. Yeah,
So
old scratch.
what do you got? Oh, you ready for the Inquisition?
I don't know.
It's late.
Do we have something?
Are you gonna put me? You're probably gonna get me. It's late and I'm tired.
So before we get into that, we're going to put a poll. Which of the four saints' visions of hell did you find the most terrifying? So which one did you guys think was the scariest?
Saint Faustina is still for me.
I'm gonna go with the kids, the Fatima kids.
Now, for me, Teresa of Avila was the most terrifying.
Yeah, you don't like dark and
I'm fine
Narrow.
with dark.
can't lay down. That's kind of like what you're going through. Like right now, you can't sleep and stuff like that.
Just constant, never any respite.
Gnarl.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't mind mud and rats, and so I've been to New York. I just kind of deal with it, Just
I don't mind mud
just
and
don't
rats.
feed
I've
'em.
been to New York.
Just don't feed them.
All right, so are you ready for the Inquisition?
I suppose.
If God sends people to hell. Well, he doesn't. People send themselves to hell. And Satan is tormenting them in hell. Is Satan actually doing God's work by tormenting people in hell?
Well, they can't come back out of hell. Like it's an eternal place.
Well, wouldn't that necessarily correlate God's presence in his will in hell when that is clearly a contradiction of theological terms because it is literally an absence of God? So I would say absolutely not.
Okay. My daughter asked me that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Your daughter is so smart, man.
She is.
That's amazing.
So I asked, here's how I answered it for her. Now, I said, now imagine I drop you off somewhere. Say we're driving to Chicago and I drop you off in a really rough neighborhood. Not to call Chicago hell. I love Chicago, but Chicago's kind of hellish at some places.
It's hellish.
Pretty scary.
It's not hell.
Right.
It's hellish.
Now, if I drop you off there and bad things happen to you there, right? Am I doing that to you? Or are the people doing them there to you? Or is it because you were left in this place? Am I punishing you? Or were you being punished because you were in this place that you were left in? Who's actually doing the punishments towards you? It's the people of the place. But because you are there of my will and you chose to go there and I allowed you to go there, that's the punishment.
Dude, that's what I tell parents that drop their kids off at my house. I'm like, you know what you're doing, right? Okay. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
I said the same thing to my neighbors.
So Satan's not God's warden.
No way.
No.
You know, he's fallen from relationship with God and union with God. God is not present in hell. It is absence of God.
Yeah. And I hope that this podcast, you start talking about hell. What it really boils down to is you talk about the mercy. You can't talk about hell without the mercy of God. Yeah. Like the that constantly extends to us for all eternity and its power to piece you back together from the disarray.
And not to go into detail of like this child sacrificing movie that I watched on Netflix that totally disturbed me, that I needed to go to bed last night. And it took a whole day for me to kind of be repaired.
You should have drank with us last night.
No. But it does take a sense of being repaired after being exposed to such darkness.
Yeah.
And, I think of Saint Faustina, these children of Fatima, and Saint Teresa of Avila and these great mystics, how God's omnipotence and his presence in their life constantly repaired them, even though they were exposed to pretty dark stuff. My brothers and sisters, if we're walking on this path, we're going to be exposed to dark stuff. We're going to go through hardship. We're going to go through difficulty. But it's all about what you do in the wake of these realities. What do you do in the wake of sin? You're not defined, like John Paul II says, by your sin that leads you to death and your concupiscence. But you're defined by what you do after these facts. And if you can respond by being faithful and responding to that call and continuing to progress in the pilgrimage of life together with your brothers and sisters and following Christ, you will find the way through that narrow gate along the merciful hands of our Savior on the tree of life and the cross. We're going to find our way together. So we so thank you for joining us on the Catholic Talk Show. We thank you for subscribing and giving us some positive reviews. And hopefully this is a blessing for you. And as we continue to journey together, hopefully we'll grow deeper in our understanding of our faith.
Bam.
Very good. All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, it was fun going to hell with you guys. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Catholic Talk Show.
Peace.
Have a great night.
God bless.